It's looking increasingly likely that Joe Biden is simply not going to be the Democratic Party's nominee to go up against Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election, really thanks to a growing chorus of voices on the left within the Democratic Party that are calling for him to step down. All of this, of course, stems back to his disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump. And the real reason that the left and the Democrats are telling us that he needs to be replaced is because there is simply just too much on the line. Democracy is on the line. Donald Trump is a threat to the United States and a threat to the world. Well, I have a slightly different interpretation of that. What you're really seeing going on here are the elites who are really in charge, the transnational corporations, the military-industrial complex, the globalist politicians that find themselves in positions of power all the way around the world. Those three forces are asking themselves, is Joe Biden really the guy who can continue selling our global agenda to the United States and to the world? And I think they are increasingly reaching the conclusion that no, he is not. He is simply not up to the task. So this isn't really about Trump. It's not about fears of the end of democracy in the United States. It's about who is going to be the best puppet to lead the world down the path of continued destruction that is not of, by, and for the people, but it is of, by, and for the elites. I'm Stuart Hooper, an independent researcher and lecturer in geopolitics. Be sure to follow me on whatever platform you're watching this on. Hit like, it really helps out a lot, and leave me your comments on this below. Would love to hear what you have to say about this, because a lot has been going on in the last few days, and the Biden administration, really from top to bottom, has had headline after headline that has been disaster after disaster. So let's take a look at what's happened in terms of this dramatic loss of support that Biden has been facing. Biden's support on Capitol Hill grimly uncertain. A seventh Democrat says he should drop out. So we have multiple people within the Democratic Party that are now on Biden to drop out of the race. And they have, of course, said that this has been a really sad discussion, that, you know, they would love to keep Joe Biden in there, and Joe Biden's great for the United States, and he's great for democracy. But here we go. Here's what I was saying. This is how they're wrapping all of this up for us. With the threat of Donald Trump, the stakes are too high, and the threat is too real to stay silent. I realize this is hard, but we have done hard things in pursuit of democracy since the founding of this nation. Yes, indeed you have, like bombing Iraq back to the Stone Age and destroying Syria and Libya and Afghanistan and numerous other nations. And that was just in my lifetime, all in the name of peace, love, and democracy. Do you see why this is all a fraud? Do you see why it's all a lie? This is not about the threat, the so-called threat of Donald Trump. This is about who is going to be the best puppet to convince the people of the United States that their vote matters, that they're actually really in charge of their government, when, of course, that's all a complete lie. But that, of course, that's just a few individual Democrats there. We've had some big names that have also come out against Biden over the last few days. Biden's candidacy faces new peril as Pelosi, Clooney, and more Democrats weigh in. So George Clooney, of course, Hollywood elite, involved in lots of these international political projects as well, international development programs, things like that. Is some of that stuff useful? Yes. Is it always useful? No, not so much. And there's an intricate critique of that we could spend some time looking at. But the real thing here is Pelosi. This figure, let's be kind, that has been in the center of American politics for quite a while. And she's, of course, facing questions on whether or not she supports Biden. And evidently she does not, because she has not come out and said, of course it needs to be Joe Biden. Of course we're going to support a second Biden presidency. And of course he's the presumptive nominee. There is no one to replace Joe Biden. She has actually said it's up to the president to decide. And here's the full quote here. I want him to do whatever he decides to do, Pelosi said Wednesday on MSNBC's Morning Joe, rather than declaring Biden should stay in. While Biden has said repeatedly that he's made his decision, she said, quote, "We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short." He is gone. He is done for. He is not going to be the nominee. I am stating that clearly right here, right now. If he is, it's only going to lead to a guaranteed Trump presidency. So unless that's really what the elites in charge want, which it's not for a few reasons, and again, Trump is by no means perfect, but let's say he comes from different elite circles than those people that are truly in charge. Unless they want him in charge, which they don't, they're going to have to replace Biden. And Pelosi is essentially telling you that right here to your face. Now, we've also had some senators that have come out and declared that Biden needs to go. Vermont's Peter Welch becomes first Democratic senator to call for Biden to step aside. And again, he's using the exact same talking points as the rest of these people. It's almost as if they're being told what to say. Isn't that interesting? The stakes could not be higher. We cannot unsee President Biden's disastrous debate performance. We cannot ignore or dismiss the valid questions raised since that night. And questions raised since that night? Where have you been for practically the whole Biden administration's time in office? I mean, let's be nice. At least the last 2 years, the train has been completely off the tracks. There were op-eds appearing in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the ivory towers of liberal elite thought that were calling out Biden for these very same problems. That he looks like he's too old, that he doesn't really know what he's doing, that he doesn't really know where he is, that he can't really string a sentence together. This was in the mainstream media as a critique in some places. Yes, it wasn't throughout the entirety of the mainstream media, but it was there if you were paying attention and looking close enough. And if this wasn't bad enough for Biden, we've had some other revelations this week that have made his propagandist-in-chief, Karine Jean-Pierre, look truly ridiculous. Parkinson's specialist met with Biden's physician at the White House earlier this year, records show. So people have done a little bit of digging here, and this is what they have found out. A top Parkinson's disease specialist held a meeting with President Joe Biden's physician at the White House earlier this year, according to records, though the circumstances of the meeting are unclear. Dr. Kevin Kennard, a neurologist at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, met with White House physician Dr. Kevin O'Connor at the White House in mid-January, according to White House visitor logs. Kennard has visited the White House 3 times this year, according to those logs. And we've had now the White House press corps finally asking some real questions of, again, the administration's chief propagandist, Karine Jean-Pierre. That's all these people are. Doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter what administration that we're talking about, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. The people that fulfill this role are propagandists. That's all they are. CNN reporter, again, right, just let's pause there. CNN is having to ask these questions. It is over for Biden. CNN reporter asks Karine Jean-Pierre if she wants to reconsider any past statements on Biden's health. And here's the quote here. Correspondent was MJ Lee. The White House has obviously fielded a lot of questions in recent days about the president's health. whether the White House has been forthcoming or not about the issue, and I just wondered, have the last 12 days made you reconsider any specific statements that you might have made in recent months on that issue? Now, this goes into, as they state here, a very tense back and forth, and ultimately the entire press corps turning on Karine Jean-Pierre. And she evidently cannot handle this degree of pressure. This is an administration that, for all of its critique of Trump and what he was doing about how he didn't like scrutiny, he didn't want to answer tough questions, well, evidently neither do you. The train is completely off the tracks. Everybody can see it clear as day. Biden is a puppet. He's not in charge of anything. He's probably not even in charge of what he has for lunch. The game is up. And people are now starting to ask real questions. Who's really in charge here? Who's really running the show? Who's pulling the strings of this puppet? What is the military-industrial complex? To what extent is NATO guiding and controlling American foreign policy decisions? They're the kind of questions that the people in charge do not want to hear. Now, let's go to our last article here, just to really put the cherry on the top of the embarrassment and disaster that this week has been for the Biden administration. White House roasted for saying Biden will give a, quote, big boy press conference. And again, I wish this was a joke. I wish I didn't have to get up here and talk about this, but this is where we are. This is the state of American politics today. In Monday's White House press briefing, John Kirby, the chief propagandist for the War Department, we'll give him his real title, raised eyebrows with his choice of phrase. Quote, the president will hold a press conference. A big boy press conference, we're calling it, with an affirmative nod and grin from Press Secretary, Chief Propagandist, Karine Jean-Pierre. You cannot make this up. The people that are really in charge, you cannot see them. They're behind the scenes, they're behind the curtain, they're in the transnational corporations, they're in the military-industrial complex, they're in groups like the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations. This is the real center of power in the United States. This circus that we're seeing here is just that. It's not where the real power lies. It's a show to make you think that your vote matters and that you have a voice in anything. You don't. And Biden has well and truly exposed that for the whole world to see, which has pushed the elites into this state of crisis. Thank you all for watching. Remember to hit like on this, follow me, and share this video everywhere you possibly can. This isn't about left versus right, or Trump versus Biden, or Democrat versus Republican. This is about the reality of political power, and where we are evidently seeing that it does not actually lie. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more soon.